paranormal. It surrounds us. It's everywhere. Tonight, you will hear from the people who live and work within these highly active locations, all in the efforts to discover America's most haunted. With your host, ghost hunter and author, Dan Terry.
Good evening, boys and ghouls. I am Dan Terry, your ghost host with the most haunted, but we're stepping away again from the ghosts for just a little bit. Give them a break because we're talking to a really awesome and interesting guest. I think you're going to like this one. Michael J.S. Carter, and guys, check out this history. It's incredible. He was originally from Baltimore, moved to New York City, where he spent 27 years, and now he's living in Asheville, North Carolina. Now, I didn't come from New York. I came out of the rural area around St. Louis, but the culture shock for me was amazing. I can't imagine what it was for him. He is an ordained minister. He graduated summa cum laude from College of New Rochelle. He's got his master's in divinity. He is a longtime UFO contactee. That's what we're going to be talking about. He's the author of a book called Alien Scriptures, Extraterrestrials in the Holy Bible. And that's what I wanted to have him talk about tonight, is evidence of the extraterrestrials. I've heard lots of that stuff. I do have some belief in it, but it's going to be interesting to hear his take on it. He's also been a guest on Coast to Coast AM with George Noory and George Noory's Beyond Belief on the Gaia channel. And he's a consultant on the History Channel's Ancient Aliens. So, friends, this guy is top-notch, number one, knows what he's talking about, and we're going to pick his brain tonight. So, the Reverend Michael J. Carter. Hi, Mike.
Dan, thank you for having me on. I've been looking for it. I think people who were, if they're Ancient Aliens fans, they might get a little shock because I had long dreadlocks.
I cut one of your pictures had that.
I mean, they were really long. I cut them shorter and shorter, and then I just said enough. So it'll be interesting, especially with the new episodes coming out. I know they're going to go, wait a minute, what happened to his hair? Yes, I'm the same guy. Yeah.
Well, just talking to you for a little bit, we'll convince him of that, I'm sure.
Yeah. Well, thanks for having me on. I've been looking forward to it.
Well, I appreciate you coming. And you know, when I was younger, and I don't know how old you are, I'm getting up there, but I was around when Von Dakian's
I'm up there.
You're getting there, huh? I was around when Von Dakian's book, Chariots of the Gods, first came out.
Oh, yeah. Me too.
And what you're talking about is in the same ball game, but not the same field. Am I right on that?
Well, yeah, and I've worked with Eric, or the late Eric. I stand on, Eric passed away. We worked together on Ancient Aliens, and we did some stuff at the Edgar Cayce Institute. I think that was back in 2017, 2018. He was a lovely soul, and he was one of the people. Well, I stand on his shoulders. I mean, not religiously, but he was one of the people, Zachariah Sitchin, the late Zachariah Sitchin, who kind of got this going, this ancient astronaut theory, if we can call it that. Mm-hmm. And we're in the same field, but I'm more on the religious side of it because right. I'm a minister. I serve a congregation, but without him, he and Zachariah and others, Dr. Barry Downing, who wrote a book, he's a retired Presbyterian minister, wrote a book back in 1968 called The Bible and Flying Saucers. I've been friendly with him. So if not for them, there'd be no me. So I'm always aware of that, especially in this field. But just in a response to what you were saying, we are way past the time, brother, where you can have a belief in it. Our government is telling us that we're not alone.
Yes.
And so that cat is out of the bag. When I first started doing this 20 some odd years ago, it was about maybe trying to convince people. That ship has sailed. Our government is telling us that they do exist. And so I just want to put that out there, that it's no longer, I wonder if we're alone in the universe. The answer is a resounding no, we're not alone. And our governments and the governments of the world are wrestling with how to disclose the public.
You think disclosure really is coming?
I think we've always been in it. It depends. It's a great question. It depends on what you've envisioned disclosure to be. If you envisioned the president of the United States, whoever it will be, or whoever it was going to be, coming out on the White House lawn and saying, guess what, folks, then you would never get disclosure. But when you had Harry Reid talking about, the late Harry Reid, talking about, this is where your tax dollars are going, this is what we've been talking about, then you have the Vatican giving little hints that angels in the Bible may be extraterrestrial. Now, to the present day, David Grush, a representative from the great state of Tennessee, Tim Burkett, they're that these things, and I think they're wrestling with what's the fallout. For me, it's exciting because eventually they're going to have to talk about religion, and they don't want to talk about religion no more than to say that maybe they're demons or that kind of thing. I've heard that one. Because religion is used to control, and you always want to, they're keeping the fear factor going, which is not always great. But when they start talking about religion, I can throw my hat or my voice in the mix, because they're going to have to talk about this topic. But right now, there's a lot going on, so they're keeping it to nuts and bolts. National security, how fast they go underwater, how fast they go tic-tac, that kind of stuff. But it's bigger than that. It's way bigger than that, in my humble estimation.
When Von Dakian wrote that, and I did not keep up with him later on in his life, but he seemed to think, if I understood him correctly, that the aliens were what we thought of as gods.
Yes.
Is that what you're saying, or do you have a different opinion on this?
Okay. It's a great question. I believe in a creator, if you will, but it's not anthropomorphic. It's not a man or woman up in the sky. To me, from what it feels like more, it's like an energy and intelligence. I think that we got in trouble when we started making a God like we are. Because I figure any God you really understand is not really a God. But that's full stop. We can unpack that if you want later. But what he was saying is that these beings were thought of as gods by our ancestors because they came from the sky, because of their technology. You know what I mean? Because we're talking about way before even the Bronze Age. And, we're talking about if anybody saw that kind of tech. Well, think of the cargo cults, during World War II, when native peoples in the Pacific Islands and what have you, maybe a World War II pilot had to land there, maybe shot up a little bit or whatever. And when they saw these airplanes, they were like, whoa. To us, it's civilization. To them, it was like godlike. And so my theory is that's what happened back then. And that's how our religions were formed. But I want to reiterate what I said at the top. And it's a matter of faith for people. I believe in a God, for lack of a better word. You can call it whatever you want. I do not believe extraterrestrials are gods. But but to people who didn't have that technology, they were godlike. Yep.
Then, and I'm almost getting off topic here, but I got to ask, then who was the Christ? Was he the son of the energy? Was he actually sent by that? Or
I see now, I won't tackle that because that's a matter of faith. That's a matter of faith. What I will say is that Jesus, the man we call Jesus, obviously existed. In my book, there are hints that he may have had UFO connections in my interpretation, but I won't see. That's a matter of faith, and that's something that someone he may be the Christ for someone. I say that, like he says, any God in him is in all of us. Because the kingdom of heaven is within you. And that got him into a lot of trouble then, and it'll get you into a lot of trouble now because we've been taught that that's blasphemous, or who do you think you are, or this God is all out there. But God is everywhere, and God is in me. He says it. The kingdom of heaven is within you. So I take that seriously. As far as Christ goes, there are, how can I say, Christ is a consciousness. It's a way of being in the world. He wasn't born to Mr. and Mrs. Christ. You know, they called him Jesus Christ, but Christ means anointed. Christ means anointed. That's a Greek word. In Hebrew, because he was Jewish and he spoke Hebrew and Aramaic and probably Latin, because he spoke to the Roman soldiers. So there were a lot of anointed. David was anointed. There were a lot of people who were anointed. And so the Greeks say the Christed one. But that doesn't set you apart. You know, and that's a whole bunch of church history. So what I'm trying to focus on to keep the conversation clean is, if we talk about Jesus, the Jesus of history is different from the Christ of faith. They are two very different things.
Let's move along. I wanted to talk to you a little bit about where there were extraterrestrials in the Bible. And did I remember correctly that there was a shield in the sky the Israelites were following to help get out of the desert?
Yes, it wasn't a shield, but that's one of the examples. Whenever, there's a couple things. Whenever you see the word angel in the Bible, if you put in the word extraterrestrial, to me, it makes more sense. Because, and you have to remember, nowhere in the Bible does it says angel have wings. I'm not saying that they didn't, but I think that our ancestors wrote that to let us know they could fly. Angels, this is leading up to what you, the other thing about the word angel, which means messenger, angelos in Greek, malakim in Hebrew, angel tells you what the function was, but it doesn't tell you who they were. It just tells you what they did. They could be diplomats, they could be judges, they brought messages. What you brought up was the pillar of cloud by day and the pillar of fire by night, when the Hebrews were in the desert for 40 years. And they followed the pillar of cloud by day and a pillar of fire by night. That tells you it's a UFO because it's in the sky. They're following it. It stops and it starts. So it's intelligent. Whoever's guiding it is intelligent. They camp out underneath of it. The manna that they get, which is the food that Yahweh is giving them, and in Hebrew, manna means, you know, what is it? They don't even know what it is. But they were eating it for 40 years, we're told. In the daytime, it looked like a cloud. And what's significant about that is there are plenty of UFO sightings in modern times where the UFO is camouflaged in a cloud,
Mm-hmm.
or it may be hiding behind a cloud, or it leaves a stream that looks like a cloud. At night, it's the pillar of fire. Why? Because it's glowing.
Mm-hmm.
That is an unidentified flying object. Or it may not be unidentified. They seem to know what it is, so it's identified. It's Yahweh's spacecraft. When we look in the book of Ezekiel, when he goes up in a flying chariot,
Mm-hmm.
when he's met on the river Chabar, when he tells the story, that is a craft. That's a craft. It's coming down from the sky. He gets on it. He talks about Ezekiel, I'm talking about. He talks about what it feels like. He says, the hands of the Lord were heavy on me, which if you think about it, he's saying the gravity. Because they're trying to tell us in their language what they see.
Mm-hmm.
See, today we say that sounds like a craft. Back then it was a flying chariot. It was the pillar of cloud by day. These people were not stupid. They knew that you didn't fly on a cloud, but that was their way of saying this is what we are seeing. It's the same thing. Elijah, he gets up in a fiery chariot and he's taken away. So those are the clues that Van Doniken was talking about, what Zechariah Stitchin was talking about. And they're also, in the New Testament. Now, okay, there's a book, a wonderful book that you'll love, or your listeners may. It's called The Spaceships of Ezekiel. It's written by a guy named Joseph, Josef Blumrich, German brother, worked for NASA engineer. He's dead now. Okay. Ezekiel talked about being picked up by a ruach, which in Hebrew is a machine that caused a great wind. We interpreted it now as spirit or spirit of God, but that's not what it means. And it travels through the sky. So he's in where? He's in Iraq. Okay. He's in Iraq. It's the Middle East. That's what's today is Iraq. He tells us what it looked like, what it was made, how it landed, what kind of wheels it had. The details are so precise that he gave us about that craft that NASA has a patent on it. Okay, why would, in the Bible they call it the Spirit of God, but why would NASA get the patent on the Spirit of God? In 1974, Joseph Blumrich, NASA engineer, Ezekiel told us which direction the wheels were going and what have you.
Okay.
So Blumrich drew a picture of what he thought Ezekiel saw because Ezekiel gave details. It's called the omnidirectional wheel. Those who want to translate Uach as the Spirit of God have a problem. How can NASA have a patent on the Spirit of God? NASA has a patent on ancient technology described in great detail, and the patent number is US 3789947A. NASA got this patent on February 5th, 1974. That's not the Spirit of God. It's a spacecraft. So those are some, if we jump to the New Testament, this star that is flying in the Christmas story, what we call the Christmas story. You and I know that stars don't fly across the heavens and shine lights down on Main Street. Stars don't do that. You want to talk about tsunamis, you want to talk about pole shifts, you want to talk about the whole gravitational pull of the Earth would be in jeopardy if a star did that. But we know that a craft can do that. And these wise men from the east. We don't know whether they're from the east side or from the east side of the city. We just know we know they're from the east, so probably from a different country. And this is what internationalizes that story, because now when they go back and lie to Herod and say, oh, yeah, well, we saw, so now people in other countries know about this story.
Okay.
It's also very Buddhist, because when the Buddhists are looking for the next Dalai Lama or Bodhisattva, they follow the stars and they go to the town where they think this person's being reborn again, right? But that's something else, but it does sound like that. So it shines a light down on this baby. It lets them know that this is a special baby. This is a special individual. If we look at it from an ancient astronaut perspective, that was a craft. Okay. We also can say, I'm just throwing things out for thought. If your mother is human and your daddy isn't, that means you're not fully human.
True.
Okay? And Jesus talks about my Father in the heavens. Joseph is his earthly father when you read the story.
Mm-hmm.
Mary is his mother. So his daddy's not human. His mother is. That means that there's a different connection going on. Maybe, just maybe, it gives us some insight into the miracles that he performed, into this high spirituality that he had.
Okay.
Then, if you look when he leaves, after he's crucified and then he rises, and then he has to go, what does he leave on? He leaves on a cloud. Because that was their word for ship. They probably got tired of saying the pillar of cloud by day, the pillar of fire by night. Say that a couple of times. That was going on for thousands of years. He leaves on a cloud up into the sky. Now, there are arguments against that interpretation, and some of them I make.
Okay.
But it is for ancient astronaut theorists. And remember, all cultures, Western, Native, Aboriginal, all have stories about gods who came down from the sky and helped human beings create civilization. Some of them were nasty. Some of them were helpful. And some of them just watched. What are they doing down there? Let's just see. But you see this in the Mesopotamian and Sumerian texts, which are older than the Bible. As a matter of fact, some of the Old Testament is plagiarized from them. It's a strong word, but they're the same stories. They just changed the characters and made it more monotheistic, because the scriptures have been written and rewritten. And so there is, the Hopi talk about it, other native cultures, Aboriginals, they all, now obviously the Hindus. I mean, is everybody hallucinating? Is everybody lying? Or is this some type of cultural memory of when the gods walked the earth? Because what you want to remember is, and no one likes to use the word, but we were invaded. I mean, that's no other way to say it. People when intelligences from other places come here, that's an invasion. That's an invasion. So that's my thesis. I don't think it's incompatible. You can be a Christian and still believe in UFOs. You can be whatever and still believe. Our ancestors were trying to wrestle with this. Who are these people? Who should we believe in? But they were here. They were here. And the Bible is one of the best narratives that we have on what it was like to walk the earth with these beings who were sometimes called the Elohim in Hebrew, which means gods plural.
Okay.
The Anunnaki. Enoch, in the book of Enoch, he talks about the Watchers.
I was going to ask you about that, the Book of Enoch.
Well, the book of Enoch was not allowed in the canon, and for obvious reasons. But Genesis 6 talks about it. Enoch just gives us a more elaborate explanation.
Okay.
We'll
hit that more. You got to slide away. Yeah. Hang loose for a little bit, Mike. We'll be right back with you, buddy.
All right.
Now, this to me is the really intriguing part when we start getting into, well, like you said, the cloud, the pillar of fire by night, the Anunnaki, and there's so much more going on with this. It's been coming out a lot. There's a huge, and I don't want to say cult, that ain't quite right, but there's a lot of people who believe that the sons of God met the daughters of man and whatever, that was angels or aliens. Again, there's just so much we could talk about. I really like having Mike on here because he's doing a great job. But I do have to pause, and I want to show you guys a few little things here, and I will be right back.
The new book, How to Research a Haunted House by paranormal investigator Margie Kay and professional researcher Violet Wisdom, is now available from Unex Media. This one-of-a-kind book explains how to do research on a house with uncommon methods and resources used by historic home researchers, and how to determine who may be doing the haunting and why. How to Research a Haunted House can be used by homeowners, renters, investors, and it should be in the library of all professional paranormal investigators. Get this unique book at unxmedia.com or amazon.com. That's unxmedia.com or amazon.com.
Now, friends, we got the Unexplained Network just bubbling over with new stuff. We've got 10 or 12 new shows. My friends over in, I met them at the Blennerhassett Hotel in West Virginia. I believe they were actually from Ohio. But they have a show on here. They've got a ghost hunting team that's done some amazing work. And they've got a show called, I believe, The Bridge. But there's that one. There's new people doing cryptids, more ghost stuff, because that seemed to be really popular. UFOs and alien stuff. We got some of the best in the world on this stuff, all here on the Unex Network, all free to watch on YouTube and Rumble. So you can become a member if you want. That's not really necessary, but you are missing out on so much if you don't. You get the blog, and the blog is coming out several times a week, usually. And it talks about whatever's new. Michael talked about the Tic Tacs. Well, we was on top of the Tic Tacs even before the news really caught up with it. When the Navy pilots admitted they had chased this thing, it moved at incredible speeds, made turns it's literally impossible for us to do. We were talking about that. There was the cryptids, Bigfoot, Dogman. We were on top of the Dogman thing. Recently, there's been winged humanoids seen over the Missouri River and in other places. Mothman's been seen again. And again, we're all on top of all of that. And that's how you keep up, by having someone sending you the information by email. Then there is the newsletter, which I believe comes out weekly and talks about what shows are out and what's going on. And then, of course, there's the magazine. That's the one you got to remember. It is a monthly magazine. It's got some of the best writers around. Heck, they even let me write on occasion. This one here, we've got the Haunted Battleship North Carolina, which I did an article on. And, of course, there is this article I did on in this particular one, on the legends of Halloween, which I'm not talking about ghosts and all of that. I'm talking about when I was a kid, they would say someone's poisoning the apples. They're putting razor blades in the fruit. They're putting drugs into the candy. And what it is every one of those and more legends actually had some basis in reality. So that's what I talked about in that one. And just moving along, I had a good article on haunted dolls on this one, which was tough to write, my friends, because dolls creep me out. And of course, I did this one, The Last Call at the Devil's Diner. That was a restaurant on Route 66 outside of St. Louis. I was on the first and third investigations ever to do it. The place was just insanely haunted. Over the years, I got to go back several times. I was leading groups for charity that was letting us ghost hunt the building, always getting something. But it got hit by a tornado a little over a year ago, so it's gone. And that was the last article I could really write about. So again, there's so much going on with the UNX network or the Unexplained network. We went back to our original name. You should be becoming a member of this. And how do you do that? Go to unxnetwork.com, drop down on that opening page. There's a description on how to do it, blanks you can fill in. Let's check it out. See if you like it. And again, you can still watch the shows, and they're all right here on YouTube and Rumble. So I got that out of the way. Let's go back to Michael, because I'm enjoying this conversation. And you had mentioned Enoch and his books, which are not canon, but they were found in the Dead Sea and caves and all of that.
That's supposed, Enoch is a continuation, Dan, of the story in Genesis 6, where it says the sons of God met the daughters of men, that they were fair, and then they had children with them. And they wound up having these children who were hybrids and tall, and it was a mess. Enoch, if you read the book of Enoch, some of the names of these beings, it was weird. Not weird, but it was interesting, because it seemed like more of a cultural exchange. I don't know what the Earth women got in exchange, but and I'm not trying to be, I'm just saying that because he says that because he was a scribe, he wrote, and so he was taking on their ships. He called them the Watchers, but he gave some of the names of them because 200 angels had come down. I think they landed not Mount Ararat. That's where Noah's thing was. But anyway, it's all in the book of Enoch. Okay. And so they taught astrology, astronomy, cosmetics. So, what crystals and jewelry were good for what, how to heal, what herbs were poisonous. They taught Earth people all of these things. And so that's why I thought maybe it didn't just seem like they were being raped or whatever. Maybe some were, I don't know. But it seemed like, here's this, like we're coming from another world. This is what you can do. Let us teach you about Earth, that kind of thing. But they had offspring, and the women gave birth to these giants, which were called, so they were half human and half, star person. And so they were eating people. They were, so this is pre-flood. They were just carrying on and destroying everything. They were very dangerous. And so the flood comes. There's some scholars who say that these ETs caused the flood. There's some people that just said that there was, the flood happened and they didn't warn them. Again, this is a story that's hundreds of thousands of years old because it's taken from the Mesopotamian text. Just the characters' names are changed. And so, but Enoch clearly talks about what it was like to be in space when you read the stars and the astronomy. How does he know this stuff? How does he know? It reminds me of the verse in Isaiah. Hold on. Do I still? Yeah, hold on. Is it here? Yeah. I'm looking at it's all tied in. So I'm not trying to go. Isaiah 40, verse 22. It is he who sits above the circle of the earth and its inhabitants are like grasshoppers, who stretches out the heavens like a curtain and spreads them like a tent to dwell in. How does Isaiah know the earth is round? How does he know it's a sphere? So you just have to ask those questions. Where are they getting this knowledge that the earth is a sphere? I was taught, maybe you were, that people didn't know that till around Columbus time. They thought you go and sail off the end. Here we have somebody 5,000 years ago saying that the earth is a sphere and its inhabitants look like grasshoppers. That sounds like someone up looking down.
Okay. So do you put much emphasis on Enoch's book?
Yeah. When usually I'm at a conference, and if it's this conversation, that's one of the stories. That's one of the things that I bring up. I approach the Bible as this. Why would they lie? Why are all these people saying the same thing? Now, I realize that it is threatening. If you are an Orthodox Christian, if you are an Orthodox Muslim, if you're an Orthodox anything, what I'm saying scares you. Because it's like, whoa, I wasn't taught that, Michael. What's that? That sounds like devil or something like that. But I'm just telling, that's why I didn't get into the faith part, because faith is personal.
Okay.
But I'm just telling you what the book is saying. So, because people have said to me on Ancient Aliens, you say that the extraterrestrials in the Bible? No, I don't say it. The Bible says it. I'm just repeating what's there. So, if you're angry, don't be angry with me. It's written there. And if you know a little bit about biblical languages, then you see it's there. And you can see where things have been reworked and rewritten, because in the 6th to 8th century BCE, in King Josiah and King Hezekiah, when they took power, they wanted everybody to be Yahwehs. They wanted everybody to believe in Yahweh, because there were other extraterrestrials. Chemosh, Kamash, Astra, Milton, a whole bunch of them. They're named in the Bible. And people are saying, well, these are other gods. Yahweh says you can't worship them. I'm the only God you're going to worship. You don't even draw a picture of them. I'm a jealous God. Well, you have to ask, if you're a God, jealousy is a human emotion. What are you jealous about? That's not God-like. That's human-like. Or when you tell people to go into other people's land, he told them to go into the land of Canaan, milk and honey. I'm giving that land to you. Well, it's hard to give people land when there are other people living on it. But you're not allowed. When I was coming up, you couldn't ask those questions. You couldn't do that because you were being bad, or you didn't have faith. But when you grow up, you look at those things and you can ask those questions. And for some people, it'll be, oh, okay, I can't. I'm going to trying to make a point. I don't need you to tell me. My relationship is personal. I don't need you to tell me what I can and cannot do. I'm just going to name some of the other ETs mentioned in the Bible, other gods: Kamash, Kosh, Milton, Dagon, Malach, Elyon, Astarte, Shaddai, Baal. Yeah, these are the other beings that are mentioned in the Bible. They're Elohim. There's more than one Elohim, because it's plural. And again, why would Yahweh say there are no other gods but me? I'm the one you're going to worship. Ancient Hebrews, they were not polytheistic. They were not really monotheistic. They were henotheistic. In other words, they knew that there were other gods, but they chose to worship Yahweh. So they acknowledge that there are other people, but this is the one we're throwing our hat in with.
Okay. Moving a little bit beyond to the Vatican, the first one. Why did they keep some of these books and stories out when they were deciding what would go into the New Testament?
The usual answer: power.
Okay.
Power. When King Hezekiah and King Josiah, his grandson, when they were going to make one temple in Jerusalem, there would be one temple, there would be one high priest, one God, one temple tax, because it's just easier to consolidate power that way. We do the same thing now. We still have that hierarchy today, and we probably learned it from the gods. What we have is God at the top, whatever that means to you. Then there's the king, queen, president, whatever. Then there's the high priest, pope, whatever. Then you got your society, you got your policemen, the people, lawyers. It's still the same pyramid. That's why. And so whatever doesn't enhance what we want, you take out. We do it now in libraries. You can't read that. That's not what we want you to read. We take all that away because we want what we want. Anything about anything that's fake news. That's fake news. The state gets to decide that, but they were doing that back then. Everybody has to believe in Yahweh. When you go to Joshua, Moses' successor, what does he say to the people? He says, you have to decide, are you going to worship the gods of Mesopotamia? Are you going to worship these other gods? Are you going to worship Yahweh? Who are you going to worship? Who are you going to be? And so either you're in or you're not.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, Yahweh has a lot of temper tantrums. Yahweh tells them to go kill men, women, and children. That doesn't sound like a God. It's certainly not the God Jesus is talking about.
Mm-hmm.
That doesn't sound like the Godfather that he's talking about.
No.
But I was taught that Jesus worshiped Yahweh because everything was in the one book, and the Old Testament was part 1 and the New Testament was part 2. But that may not necessarily be true. And again, I'm not making it up. Jesus is talking about tenderness, having mercy, love, compassion. Okay? Yahweh is talking about killing men, women, and children. He wants gold. He wants the sheep. Those are two very different people. And
Yes.
not once does Jesus call him by name. Not once does he talk about Yahweh. If anything, he talks bad about, disparagingly. When he's arguing with the Pharisees and the Sadducees,
think of that.
he says, your father is the devil and the father of lies. Well, who's he talking about? Because they're worshiping Yahweh. And they're saying, you're not doing what Yahweh told us. That's the big argument. You're supposed to be Jewish, but you're not acting like it, because this is, and if you read the New Testament, many times Jesus is saying, the old law was this, I tell you this.
Okay.
The old law was that, but I tell you this. He's changing the law. And so those Jews who later became what we would call Christians, or in the book of Acts, followers of the way, that's that big argument in Acts 15 between Paul and Peter and Jesus' brother James. So Mary may have had sex the old-fashioned way, because Jesus did have brothers and sisters. Yes. And James was one of them. So, and they're arguing about, Paul is saying, I met him on the road to Damascus. They're saying, but you didn't know him. We walked with him. We talked with him. Paul is saying, but I saw that light on the road. And so that's the big argument. Paul is a Jew, but he's a Roman citizen. He had rights that they don't have. He wants to say, well, we want to take this to the Gentiles. And so he's saying, we don't want to be circumcised. We don't want to have to eat kosher. You don't have to do that now. Jesus has changed all that. And they're saying, no, he didn't change all that. Because we forget that Jesus was very, very, very Jewish. He was called Rabboni. He was a rabbi. He didn't know anything about Christianity. He never heard of Christianity. It was reforming Judaism.
But it wasn't the Judaism they were used to.
Well, no, because they were children of Moses. And who did Moses worship? Yahweh.
Okay.
And Jesus is coming along saying, we don't need to do that anymore. That's you got to have a little mercy. You don't kill everybody just because they don't do everything in the law. There's such a thing as forgiveness. But they were still in that Old Testament. Moses says, you know, if you do this, you die. Women don't do this. Women don't. And he was coming to soften that.
Okay.
It's right there. It's right there in the Bible.
When did it change? I mean, because when Moses brought the books down, there was not to kill and all of this, and yet they were stoning people and all of that.
Yes.
How did those two things match up?
They changed when Jesus came. And remember, in Hebrew, it's not you don't kill, it's thou shalt not murder. Okay. And they were only talking about you don't murder other Jews. You don't sleep with your Jewish neighbor's wife. You don't commit adultery. They weren't talking about everybody. If they were talking about everybody, you wouldn't go into the land of Canaan and kill them all.
So who was Yahweh, in your opinion, as opposed
to... Yahweh was an astronaut. Yahweh was one of the people. If you go to Deuteronomy 32, I think verse 8, you start seeing how the earth was divvied up. And Yahweh got the tribe of Jacob. He didn't get the whole family. He just got Jacob's tribe. And he wasn't given land. It's right there in 32. And he wasn't given land. All the other Elohim. So what does Yahweh do? That's why he's fighting everybody. Because he's got no land. So how do you get land? And so who's fighting? Human beings are fighting each other over because of the God they worship. I'm on Yahweh's. I'm a Yahweh's. So I'm fighting with Yahweh. And we're going to war against the Moabites. They're Jewish too. They're just another tribe. I want to share this. Okay, Daniel 10:13. Daniel's fighting. Well, they're always fighting. Michael catches up with Daniel, and he says, I would have been here sooner. Now, he's fighting the Prince of Persia, who's probably another ET. Persia is right now where we're fighting in Iran, right? He says, Michael says, I would have been here 3 weeks ago, but I was fighting the Prince of Persia. So you have an angel, Michael, telling Daniel, I would have been here 3 weeks ago. So these angels fight. They're not superhuman. I'm just going to be here. But I was fighting the Prince of Persia. How else are you supposed to interpret that? You don't have to read Hebrew. You don't have to read. It helps. But this is what they're saying. If you go to Jeremiah 2:20 and 3:6, Jeremiah is lamenting that all these people are worshiping the other gods. They don't like Yahweh. They don't like Yahweh. Yahweh has got temper tantrums. Yahweh's a taskmaster. And Jeremiah's a Yahwist. Why are you worshiping these other gods? Why don't you worship Yahweh? It's all right there, brother. It's all right there.
So if we was to put this into more modern terms, what are we dealing with here? Multiple aliens from different places that are fighting each other, using us to fight each other?
Yeah. Like I said, we were invaded. When you go to the Hindus, and they're talking about the wars that are there in the Mahabharata, they're talking about the Vimanas, the flying machines. They call them Vimanas, talking about flying cities. These ships must have been huge. And they're fighting. These gods are fighting one another. And we're fighting with them. If you look in the Middle East, what are we doing now? The Christians are fighting. Their God is fighting. Yes, there's oil and all that. Don't get me wrong. That's there. Yeah. But basically, my God is bigger than yours. That's what they were doing back then.
So nothing's changed as far as the Middle East goes.
Nothing's changed. And no, it's changed, but it's not just the Middle East. It's all over the world.
Okay.
It's all over the world. You know, you can't just look. Let's not blame it on the Middle East. We have the same thing here. We have people fighting over whose God's bigger, maybe my God is liberalism. Maybe your God is conservatism. Maybe your God is MAGA. Maybe your God is this, that, and the other. Whatever it is, we're fighting each other over. Maybe your God is money. And so the reason why because I know we're running out of time, I think this is so very important, and maybe this is a good way to close, is that if I worship a God who thinks it's okay to kill people, then I'm going to think it's okay to kill people in the name of my God. If I worship a God who says it's okay to go over there and take their land, I'm going to give this to you, I'm going to do this, that, or the other. It's okay. This person is not circumcised, so they're not one of us. It's okay. If I worship that, then I'm going to do that. And so that's how religious wars are started. Nobody is talking about the teachings of Jesus, which were not about this. So you get to choose, or at least to think about, wait a minute, who is this guy in the Old Testament? Is this the same? Are these the same principles and values that I want to represent? Do I want to kneel down to this? Because this is certainly not what he's teaching. And yes, there are different, but we have Greys, we have Nordics, we have reptilians, right? We have Arcturians. They're different. Last checked, I think in disclosure, there were like at least 20 different species. Some of them need bodies, some of them don't. Some of them are pure energy beings. Some people can get here without a ship. There are people that can reach you. They don't need a ship. So the universe is teeming with life. And once you say, I believe that we're not alone in the universe, your whole life has to change. The way you look at God, God's not in this little box. And so once you say, I believe in extraterrestrial life, or I believe that the universe is teeming with life, you have to look at what you believe differently. The unexamined life is not worth living, and the unexamined faith is not worth having.
Okay.
But life is about growth. If you believe now what you believed 10 years ago, you haven't grown.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mike, this has been an intriguing conversation. I hope I can get you to come back sometime. We'll do some more of it.
Of course you can.
There's a lot of things we never got to touch on, like the Nephilim and all of that. We just brushed over it. There's a lot
because
giants.
An hour is not enough time. Think about the Titans. Well, they're called Titans, but we call them hybrids. Zeus. Zeus was the head extraterrestrial, if you will. We call them hybrids. They call them demigods. Zeus is, and he's got all these other gods underneath of him. Right? Well, that's the same thing when you read the Bible and you read the Hebrew. He's called El Elyon or El Shaddai. Yahweh's not even a commander. Yahweh is he didn't get any land. And we go back to that in Deuteronomy 32. So yeah, we can do more. But that's where I'm coming from. And I want to reiterate before we go, you can still be a Christian, Muslim, Jewish.
Mhm.
You can still do no religion. You can still do all those things because that's what our books are telling us. What these they were saying, what's the world like? What do I believe now? I'm here. All these different beings. They're not even from here,
Mm-hmm.
and they're wrestling. And Jesus comes along thousands of years later, says, "Let me tell you about another way to look at this. Tell you another way to look at this. Let me tell you about my Father. I don't know about that one,
But
let
that
me
was
tell you
a
about
threat to their power.
You better believe it.
Yeah.
You better believe it because Rome, you could have no other gods.
Okay.
The emperor was God.
Mm-hmm.
Caesar was called God. And we've seen that before. Alexander the Great was called a god. He was supposedly born of a virgin. Do you know what I mean? These stories are not, the other side of this is if it's not well, we'll get to it, how the difference between the Gentiles and how the Jews looked at stuff. But what they were trying to do, the Jews like Paul, who was a Roman citizen, well-to-do, they were trying to get Rome to see that we're not really a threat to you.
Yeah.
We believe you're God. So they wrote stories in certain ways. And in the Greek world, in the Roman world, they had all these people who died and rose again and went up in the sky.
Mm-hmm.
So without the UFO thing, you have to ask yourself, because Mark has no resurrection story, and Mark is the first gospel, has no resurrection story. Matthew, Luke, and John have one, and it's all different. And so you have to ask, what they were trying to say is Jesus was a special individual who was for God, and this is what happened to him. And then the Romans and the Greeks go, oh, okay, we know. Okay, we're familiar with that because we have our gods do that.
Okay.
See what I'm saying?
Sure.
So that's the thing. So the Christ of faith, we know Jesus the man existed for the most part. We don't have 100% evidence, but we know he existed, right?
Mm-hmm.
But the anointed part, because that's all Christ means. It just means anointed. When you go look at Jewish history, there's a lot of people who were anointed. They're the Messiah. They're this. Because they thought that a Messiah was going to come and help them kill Rome and go there. They thought Jesus was going to do that. But Jesus was a little more gentle than they thought.
That was a threat.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mike, we have got to go. I'm right on the cusp, but I do want to just show people your book, Alien Scriptures, Extraterrestrials in the Holy Bible, and A New World, if you can take it, God, Extraterrestrials, and the Evolution of Human Conscious. I know you got several others. We'll have to get back together and talk more about this because this is something
let's set
I
it up.
enjoy.
Let's set it up.
We'll do that. Hey, would you hang loose for a second? I want to talk to you a little bit after the show.
Sure.
All right. Take care of yourself. I'll talk to you in a few minutes. Friends, I am running out of time, so let me tell you all to stay warm, stay cool, whatever. I know summer's coming. Finally, I didn't think it was ever going to get here. And of course, I guess most important of all for me to tell you is to stay spooked. Okay? Good night.